Welcome everyone to the Sage Presence webinar today, Grow It, How to Build a Culture of Business Development. I'm Troy Parkinson with Sage Presence. You can't see me, but you'll hear me throughout as I open up our webinar today and help moderate the experience throughout. So a couple quick housekeeping notes. If you have questions at any point, feel free to include them in the chat window or in the Q&A, and we would love to hear your questions throughout the process. But today we're going to have a really powerful conversation about building a culture of business development. And today's webinar is going to be a conversation between Sage Presence founder Pete Makalek and Sage Presence senior consultant Lori Curl, who has had a career in business development and sales training. So welcome, Lori and Pete.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, nice to not see everybody. Nice to have you.
So as we begin today, we want to get to a better understanding of who's with us on this call. So we're going to launch a brief poll here. And in that poll, we're going to ask a couple of quick questions so we can get a sense of who's with us today. So the poll now is live for the participants on this webinar. What type of work does your firm do? And they are multiple choice. So if your firm does more than one thing, feel free to lock in. What is your firm's business development model? And what is your primary responsibility? And there are a couple of multiple choices there too, so you can choose more than one as necessary. But we're about halfway there in terms of our attendees logging into the poll. So we'll give just a few more moments here to see if we can get all our numbers up before I share the poll. 10 more minutes, 10 more seconds. All right, 9, and here we go. I'm going to end the poll.
5 more of you who haven't participated yet.
All right, here we are. So we had 79% of the participants chime in. A majority of our individuals today come from engineering firms at 47%, as well as a tie between architecture and construction at 32%. What is your firm's business development model? A lot of them are seller doer with some dedicated business development staff. Majority of them are seller doer. And what is your primary responsibility? We have a pretty close tie here between having 10 individuals that are marketing and 9 that are in business development and a few others. So thank you for sharing who you are in this process. It helps us inform the conversation. And once again, if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to put them into the chat window. I will be monitoring that throughout, and we look forward to including you in the conversation. And with that, Pete and Lori, you can begin.
All right. All right, everyone. So there are 3 very simple goals that we have for you in this webinar. By the time we are done, we want you to walk away with 3 things. The first thing is we want you to have a sense of where your firm is today. Second thing is we want you to have a vision of what's possible for your firm along the lines of a business development culture for the firm. And the third thing is we want you to have a sense of what it'll take, what kind of a plan you can have that will get you from where you are right now to where you want to be. Now we've already learned a little bit about you with those 3 polls that we just took. Now that we have gathered that information from you, let's Lori and I have a sense of how we need to connect the dots to the kinds of organizations you are, the kinds of responsibilities that you have, the kinds of business models that you have. So let's jump into it for you.
And if anytime you have a question that comes up, we would love for you to place the question in the chat, and Troy will let us know and we'll try to address everything. Now that we know who you are, we're going to try to, as Pete said, connect the dots. But if at any point we're not connecting your dots, let us know and we'll do the best that we can. The first thing we're going to do is take a look at your future vision of a BD culture. There's a reason you signed up for the webinar, and we believe that most likely you are either trying to get there or trying to improve or starting from scratch. So we're going to try to cover some steps that are really going to help you today. But before we start, look down the road. What is it between here and there? What are we trying to accomplish, right? What is your future vision? We really would love to know how you we'll see how you see it being in the future by answering a few questions.
So
So
everybody grab a sheet of paper and a pen or something, anything to take some notes with.
yeah, you'll want to use those for future reference, and this is for your eyes only. So, first of all, what percentage of your client-facing team members will be able to recognize BD opportunities when they hear them? What will it look like in the future? Will they be able to develop and nurture trusting relationships with your prospective clients?
Hmm.
And how well will they be at listening for those future opportunities with existing clients, things that pop up, potential projects, potential problems? How are they going to learn? How will they be at listening for those opportunities and capturing them? Take
Okay,
a
and
couple.
I'm seeing a question from Ryan Park. Troy, Ryan, do you want to type it in? Troy, are we seeing anything?
Might take them a minute.
No,
Oh,
sorry to interrupt. I think I pressed the wrong button.
oh,
That's okay.
okay. All
That's
right,
all right.
no problem at all. Okay, so what we've asked you to do so far is to write down the three numbers, the percentage of your client-facing team members that can do those three things in the future as you envision it. All right, let's take a look at where your firm is today, your sense of where your firm is today along similar lines. So again, we want you to think about your client-facing team members, and we want you to ask yourself three questions and scribble down answers to these three questions. So, what percentage of your client-facing team members right now know what BD activities you want them to do? Take a moment and scribble that number down. What percentage of them actually do the business development activities that you want them to do? And then the third question is, what percentage of your client-facing team members are good at the BD activities that you want them doing? So now you should have two groups of numbers there. The first group is your target numbers, what you want your team to be achieving in the future in terms of BD, and your current numbers, what is going on with your client-facing team members right now in terms of them uh, knowing what you want them to do and being able to do those things. Lori?
So now you've got a comparison of where you want to go and where you are now. So let's talk about why it hasn't happened yet, or why you haven't gotten all the way to that future focus, that future state. Tell you what, before we do that, why don't we ask the audience, what are your challenges? We've got some that we know people that we've heard. What are some of the challenges, some of the obstacles that get in your way?
Right. So again, this is you're looking at the numbers that you just scribbled down here, and where your team is now is not where you want it to be. So the question is why? What's in your team's way? Troy, what are we hearing?
Well, as questions come into the webinar chat, a couple of things that we've heard throughout the years is that a lot of the times people want to focus on billable work, or I don't have time to help my doer sell. We've also heard things like my team doesn't know how to sell, and my people might say the wrong thing. which is a common thing.
Doesn't
And my
happen.
people aren't good with people. And this is they're highly technical. They're very good at what they do, but they just aren't people. A true
Yeah.
desire. The other one comes in is a true desire to participate in BD. They see it as a second level task or a necessary evil. So those are some of the ones that have come in.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, and it sounds quite, I think you've touched on most of them that we hear. Often we hear that our people are just too busy. I can't get their attention. Every time I try to help them and give them some ideas as to how they can execute their BD efforts, they're just too busy. I'm doing now. I don't have time to sell. And there's also that lack of accountability. Wondering how many of you out there have experienced that. You know that you would like them to be doing and what you'd like them to be doing, but it's not always reinforced, and nothing really happens if they don't do it. And then the fact that some people just don't want to sell. They don't want to be perceived as being salesy. Nobody does. And their thought of what sales is more like that than it needs to be. And people just don't know how. I mean, nobody's ever taught them. And if you are in a BD role or you've been in BD and that's your areas of expertise, you know how. And sometimes we take for granted that other people do as well. And lastly, and it's a big one for many firms, lack of senior leadership support. Now, some of you may be senior leaders, so you'll listen to this, but those of you that aren't, you know how important it is to have them be reinforcing of what you're supposed to be doing. And if they are not expecting the same thing that you are, not going to happen.
Yeah. We've
Mhm.
talked with an incredible number of BD leaders who have all of the responsibility and none of the authority, meaning they're responsible for the whole team generating business development, but they don't have the authority to make company-wide decisions. The folks on top who do have that authority aren't necessarily supporting their initiatives. And
Mhm.
so the whole organization is kind of dead in the water as a result. So yeah,
So,
leadership support is huge.
I'd love to hear if there are any questions as a result of this. If you want to share that, yeah, I definitely can relate to that. It'd be a good idea if it would be great if the rest of us could get an idea.
Yeah,
Anything,
one
Troy?
question that came in from our audience was that their team members, they don't have the confidence in themselves
Absolutely.
Mm,
to sell or talk to clients about future work.
mhm.
Exactly. And that's very, very common. I mean, and most of the time it's because they don't know how. And again, we expect them to know how, and they need to understand what goes into doing it. And once they understand how, then they will be confident with practice.
Yeah, and on top of learning how, there's also uh, the folks that they report to confirming their confidence, encouraging them, kind of undergirding their confidence by celebrating their successes and adding on to their presence as opposed to undercutting it. Instead of getting mad at them for not doing what they should be doing, they are communicating their pride and their support and their happiness for them doing the stuff that is being asked of them.
Definitely. Anything else, Troy?
I think we're good to keep going.
All right. Oops. Technical difficulties. Trying to advance.
Okay, so
Sorry.
we want to walk through 5 steps to building a business development culture. And the simple concept here is these steps are answers to 5 questions. So we want to suggest that you address a sequence of 5 questions as you design your plan. The first question is, who should participate in business development? So that's literally who among your existing team right now should be participating one way or the other. Second question is, why should they participate? And this is an absolutely critical question because people won't do anything if they don't understand the why behind it. Third question is, how well can they participate right now? You want to get a sense of if you're asking them do certain things, how well can they do those things right now? Number 4 is how good can they get? So distinct from how good they are right now, you want to start to explore how good they possibly can get. And the final question is, what can we do? How can this organization build momentum around business development? Because it really is a team sport. It's a unified team initiative. And as things progress, you can build momentum over time.
So the first step, who should participate? I know if I were you, I'd be thinking, well, shouldn't everybody? But really what we're talking about are your client-facing team members. It's important to identify who they are and who needs to be involved and in order to help it work. We also need to make sure that our senior leaders truly support the initiative. So before we start step 1, we're going to recommend that you create the plan and really talk to your senior leaders and make sure that they're willing to support the initiative. We also want to make sure that we consider the people that have that opportunity to engage prospective clients. Now, that's not all of your client-facing folks, but they're the ones who speak at conferences and network with people. Some people just do, if you've got dedicated people, maybe they're dedicated doing prospecting and pre-positioning. And sometimes in a seller-doer model, that everybody's doing that. But also we can't forget interviewing, because everybody needs to be really, really confident in their ability to persuade in interviews. And last but not least, it's a group that many of us don't think that much about. They are client facing, and that's those that are in the project. Once we've gotten the pursuit, the people that are boots on the ground, the project manager in pre-project planning, in the middle of the project where things might come up, problems might come up. They've got to sometimes have to deliver bad news. And they also have the opportunity to listen for maybe potentially future projects that might happen. And lastly, the marketing team, the folks that go out and take the photos when the project's done and interface with the client and have the opportunity to really get some feedback and generate some excitement for them being potential advocates. Does anybody have any questions around that? What questions might you have or comments?
Yep, around identifying the key team members that you want to participate in business development. And maybe while you all think about that, let me just underscore one really crucial thing that Lori just discussed. And it's this first thing about identifying the senior leaders who need to support the initiative. I once knew a woman who was responsible for business development in her organization. And very early on in her job, she connected with a senior leader who just naturally did recognize the value of business development and naturally recognize the value that she brought to that pursuit. So there were a number of senior leaders in the organization. This one person was well placed enough that he could provide the air cover that she needed to constantly feel like she had a blessing to do what she knew was right for the organization. So the reason I tell this story is it really does kind of depend on the organization and the group of senior leaders. You don't necessarily need to win over every single senior leader in order to get the support that you need in the organization. You might just be able to very strategically choose 1 or 2 crucial senior leaders, recognizing, okay, if that person can support me, then the rest of them will support me too. So that's what we're thinking there. Think about who the senior leaders are and really strategically choose who among them needs to support me. Second version of this question is, who in leadership am I going to ask to actually participate in business development? Because we do believe that even if you are very high up in an organization, you can play a really crucial role in building business for the organization. And there are very specific ways that you can ask them to participate.
Great. Any questions yet?
No questions in on this one, so I think we can
Okay,
keep trucking
all right.
along.
Yeah. No, I definitely, those are great tips. And, I'd like to make sure that you understand, this isn't 24 to the right, 17 to the left, 32 to the right. I mean, some of these things are going to work for you, not necessarily in order. Our purpose today is not to let you know that we have the magic silver bullet. But a lot of these ideas we really strongly believe will be helpful for you all going forward.
Mhm. All right. So second step is to ask the question, why should they participate? And this is because they won't participate if they don't get it. So it's really crucial that they get the why behind this initiative, the why behind what you are proposing to do and what you are asking them to do. And it begins with these senior leaders that I was talking about. You want to think about what's in it for them. Now, one big answer to that is, well, whatever's good for the organization is good for the senior leaders. But I don't want you to just think along those lines. I want you to think about what you know is important and valuable to each potential senior leader that you approach. Part of the reason why this is so important is there was another BD leader that I worked with who had a senior leadership that was really frustrating him. This senior leadership was just not participating in the whole business development conversation at all. Their attitude towards business development was, hey, it's your responsibility. We're focused on our own individual things. And so he had the kind of the difficult challenge of sitting down with each of those senior leaders and connecting the dots between business development and their area of focus. So the ops leader had to understand what's good for business development is good for ops. The financial officer needed to understand what's good for BD is good for the finances. The CEO, the president, etc. So do that. Focus in on the specific needs and interests of the senior leaders that you have identified are crucial to support this thing. Second thing is be very clear on what's in it for the firm, so that you can answer the concerns and the questions of people in the organization that you are asking to do things. Everybody is going to be sort of thinking along those lines, especially the lower in the organization that you go. They're going to be saying, well, of course they're asking me to do this because it's good for the firm. But you want to start thinking about, well, what is the firm-wide answer to this question? And it's probably going to be along the lines of consistency and predictability for the organization. The more people who participate in business development, the more consistent sales will be, and the more predictable work will be, and there won't be a feast or famine experience. The third thing to focus on here is what's in it for the participants. And I think the best way to think about this is not in a presentational way, but in a conversational way. It's really important that everyone who's being asked to participate in business development feel like they are known, feel like their own individual goals are acknowledged, and that it's it's really crucial that they feel like their participation in business development will actually further their own professional interests. So if it's not you sitting down with each individual because maybe there are too many individuals in your organization, it should be each individual having a conversation with the person that they report to, and that person is should be asking them questions, understanding what their goals and challenges are, so that the specific ask of "we want you to do X, Y, and Z" for business development clicks with their particular goals and their particular interests. Sure, there can be a version of this that is somewhat presentational, but it really should all be communicated around a one-on-one, personal, educated, informed conversation that makes each person feel like they are being actively requested to participate in BD.
Questions come into that regarding that, Pete. And the
Yeah.
question is, what about BD mentoring? Some senior leaders are reluctant to bring junior members along on BD touches/events. How do you encourage BD training in this way?
Ooh, great.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a good question.
yeah, go for it, Lori.
Yeah, well, the challenge is there that because the folks don't have more junior individuals don't have the skills. They often don't have the worldliness. They don't have the experience to know how to handle themselves and carry themselves. And again, it's about knowing how to do it. And that's why it's really important that we get them to understand how to do that, which will encourage those senior mentors to include them. And also letting the senior leaders know that these folks are the future of the firm. So it's really, really important that we figure out a way to make that happen.
Mhm. So, Lori, would you suggest that more senior BD folks really just take these more junior folks to events and have them participate in the conversation to whatever degree they're comfortable with, but maybe just by exposing them to these conversations, they're educating them in terms of how these conversations go and how responses to certain questions can go just by sort of demonstrating them right in front of them?
Yeah, absolutely. And also in really making sure that they understand that networking conversations are always about the prospective client, the person that you meet. Same with social media. We're supposed to make it about them. So it's more about asking questions and knowing what questions to ask to make them more comfortable. So all of that together. Agreed.
There's another great question that's come in on this before we move to the next step. And that is Ashley asks, how do you manage expectations for the participants? Many expect to leave one meeting with a project, and they often get defeated early on because they think it's one touch point that's going to make a sale when it could be 3 to 5 touch points over a period of time before they make a sale.
I love that question.
Mm.
My version of this. Let me throw this out, Lori, and I'm sure you're going to have another great answer as well. I like to define success as any version of progress. It's not about getting to the finish line, especially not in a first conversation, but any version of progress where maybe what it is I know more about the prospect than I did at the beginning of the conversation. I discovered one thing that they care about, or maybe I discovered a number of things that they value. If if you can communicate that to team members, that being farther along the path at the end of the conversation is than you were at the beginning of the conversation, if that's the definition of success, then people will feel rewarded by the conversation as opposed to to any version of discouragement or failure.
Great. Can you clarify a little bit on that question? What I thought I heard was about being involved initially and then not through the rest. Whoever asked that question.
Actually, Yeah, it's more managing expectations for someone who comes to one of these meetings.
Mhm.
Many of the up and comers expect to leave one meeting with the project. Like they have one meeting with the potential client and they think, oh, we got the project. So they have
I
to
see.
build a level of patience
Right.
to understand that it could be a longer sales cycle.
Well, and I think I totally I appreciate the question. A lot of that goes around the lack of clarity of what are the expectations of each what is your role? And we typically so often we see a lack of process across the AEC industry, that people don't really know what is my role, what are the steps, how far do I work with the client? It's very frustrating when you bring someone in and then you're not, and I'm hearing you say they don't want to be involved. I get that. We've got to figure out why. But the people that there are people that do and get frustrated that they don't continue to be in that process, or at least be part of understanding how things are moving along. I hope that addresses that question. Good stuff.
Excellent. And we can continue. I'll watch for continued questions. And again, we're about halfway through, about 12:32 now. So we've got about half of our session left, and continue to ask the questions.
Okay. Well, let's move on then to step 3. All right. How well can the people you have participate now? So we asked you to look at that, where you want them to be and where they are now. We'd like you to peel back the layers of the onion here and really look in detail at what skills do they have in this moment. How well do they, how well are they able to articulate the value of the firm to prospective and existing clients? Do they even know what it is? You've heard value proposition, that word, your elevator speech, but basically it's really what differentiates our firm from the others. And they need to be able to articulate that. And they can't do that if they A, don't know what it is, and B, don't have help in constructing that message. Secondly, it's important that they are able to speak with warm, confident, on-brand presence. Do they? Can they? I know that doesn't always happen, and especially, I have to say, especially with up and coming, the younger generations, they are not as used to having contact in warm, one-on-one, face-to-face contact with other people, and I know that is a generalization. It seems like it's getting more and more true. So it's really important to understand how well do they do that. So in order to do that, we have to observe what they're doing. And can they lead? We were just speaking about it, a meaningful networking conversation. Do they make it about them? Are they comfortable approaching people or groups of people? And all of those things are things that can be taught. 9 times out of 10, they're just not aware. And then once they get aware of the why, to Pete's point, it's okay, how do we get there? So we've got to identify where the gaps are right now. And Leslie, are they able to cultivate relationships? So thinking about those people that are, if they're at the beginning of a relationship with a prospective client, and once you get the pursuit, what about the people that are in that project? Are they able to be warm? Are they able to engage? Are they able to show appreciation to your customers, your clients, and to make sure that they get feedback, make sure they're happy? Do they know how to do that? These also are communication skills that are absolutely essential. So again, it may be step 3, but it's one of the most important to do before you can move ahead. Any
So,
questions on that piece?
yes, any questions about how to assess the skills of your team, or maybe how to decide what skills to assess?
Nothing yet, but I'll keep you posted as more come in.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so step 4 is asking the question, how good can they get? What you want to do is fill the skill gaps. Now that you have decided who should be doing what, and you've assessed them for what you want them to be doing, the assumption here is that there are skill gaps. that these folks aren't doing what they should be doing as well as you want them to be doing it through no fault of their own. We recommend a two-step approach to filling the skill gaps. And the first step is, group workshops or e-learning to communicate the overarching principles of the skills that people are learning. You are basically establishing a shared language among the organization. The second thing is one-on-one coaching. So assuming that you've done the group workshops right and or the e-learning right, everyone now has a shared language and a shared understanding of the basic principles of business development, but they don't necessarily have the muscle memory for it. They don't necessarily have the experience of connecting the dots between these lessons learned and specific challenges that they will bump into, or their own individual goals as they're practicing this stuff. And that's where coaching comes in. Coaching connects the dots between the principles learned in the group workshops or the e-learning and the specific on the ground real experience that people are going to be applying those principles. So coaching can help folks kind of prepare for those specific specific conversations or specific presentations that they need to deliver in order to succeed in their BD activities.
And it's all about practice. I mean, that's what it's all about, because the only way to change behaviors is to let them know what needs to change, why it's important, and then how do we change it? And they need the opportunity to practice, get feedback, and be in a continuous improvement cycle, because that will definitely increase their confidence.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what questions does anyone have about this stuff, about filling the skill gaps in your team?
Nothing yet, but I'll keep watching.
You know,
There's
one
questions
caveat
coming in.
here, what some of you may be thinking, but may not want to share, is that this also includes making sure the right people are in the right roles, because people can not want to do it and not be able to do it. And there are some people that really want to and they can't. And so it's very important that we know, that we understand what we're looking for and make sure that what we're looking for is a match for that person, whether maybe they shouldn't be doing it or maybe they're in the wrong role.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Okay.
Did we have a question or are we good?
I see, Linda, you had your hand raised, so I am going to allow you to talk if you'd like. Hi, Linda. If you can hear us, you are live and you can ask a question, or if it was just a mistake, we'll just see.
Thank you for that. I mean, I did have a question, but then Laurie did cover that, talking about the different personalities and getting the right people in the right places. So I guess really we can't teach. I mean, would you say we can actually teach most of our business developers or our project managers to go out and speak with potential clients, or are there some you can't actually teach? Because in my eyes, it's a personality
That's part of it.
part,
Absolutely.
right?
I
So
mean, if
I
you,
don't know if
well,
the
subject matter
teaching
expert.
part just I can't grasp that, I guess.
No, I understand. So the thing is, we have to, one of the things, we work with subject matter experts all the time. So we work with architects and we work with engineers and we work with construction managers. And, you know, these folks are great at what they do. And we can't expect them to be a star sales guy, right? A star BD person. And they're not all going to even want to network or you know, generate new business. So it's really a matter of that, you know, they need to get it, to our point, that they need to know the why. They need to want to do it, right? And they need to be able to do it. And so that, you know, that could be where you say, well, maybe we're going to give them this level of skill, but we're not going to ask them to do this. Does that help?
That does make sense, but what if they want to do what's way up here, but that
Hmm.
they don't have the personality for it, and then
Interesting.
you still then try to coach them along and let them have that try at it?
Let me dive in if I
Yeah.
may. I think there are multiple perspectives on this.
Mhm.
I'm my own personal preference is if somebody wants to do something, you shouldn't stand in their way. Now, having said that, you don't want to you don't want to throw them into the deep end, knowing that they can't swim. So my recommendation is to absolutely encourage anything that they're interested in and give them some sort of support structure so that they aren't necessarily flailing around in the deep end without knowing what to do. Having said that, nothing teaches like failure. so there is a mix here. If somebody says they want to try something, I personally would encourage it, and I wouldn't necessarily have them just have them go out alone and see what kind of damage they do. Go with them,
Mhm.
support them, and be kind of their wingman, um, or wing person, so that you can be there uh, to mentor in the moment.
Right, and have them ride along, do ride-alongs, and so that they can see how you do it. And we don't want robots, but they can see what it takes to do it, and they may decide, wow, is that what it looks like? Huh, I don't think I want any part of that. Or they might say, that's great, teach me how. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laurie. Thank you, Babe.
Oh,
Thank you, Linda.
you bet.
All right, moving on.
Okay, so step 5, are we there already? How do we do this? How do we build momentum? How do we get this off the ground and keep it building and keep it heading towards the success, that future vision that we want? It's again, we really need to utilize senior leadership. We want to make sure that they are available and they are willing, sorry, they're willing to provide that ongoing support that not only we need as far as giving us that accountability to do it, but the ongoing support to keep it top of mind and make sure that you have the resources you need, make sure that the message is there and that that's a focus and that folks hear it on an ongoing basis. And then the next thing is the continued coaching. Now, we can want to do all the coaching we can, but one of the challenges that we see is there are coaches, there are people that want to be coaches and they know they need to do it and they know they're good at it and they want to keep doing it, but they're being pulled in multiple directions by leadership and by all the things that they're expected to do. And the time isn't there. All of a sudden we don't have time to coach. And that's really the worst thing that can happen, especially if somebody is on their way, they want to do it, they need help, and they're not getting the coaching. And everybody knows about KPIs, right? What are the results that we're trying to find or trying to achieve? And some results can be measured and some not necessarily. But making sure that you know what are the benchmarks for your progress. Does everybody know what success looks like? And does everybody know that if they do what they're supposed to do, they are going to succeed? And last but not least, that their successes are going to be celebrated. We all know the feeling. We've been asked to do something, we do it and we give it our best, and it's like, okay, so how did I do? Right. So that's really, really important to make sure all of those steps and senior leadership can really help with that. But it's not always an easy thing to get.
Right. And it is just so absolutely crucial. If the target here is a culture of business development, it
Mhm.
really does need to be a firm-wide thing that gets that starts at the top and or at least gets participated in at the top. It could start with you as a BD leader, but if the folks at the top of the organization aren't actively participating in the process and actively encouraging it and supporting it, then it isn't going to be a culture of business development. It's going to be a smaller activity that you are kind of asking folks to grind away at. It really does need to be a team-wide thing that senior leadership is singing the praises of in an ongoing way.
Right.
We just had a question come in that I wanted to add to the conversation. Some firms lack a good way to effectively report out relevant client touches via a CRM or a similar platform. Any recommendations on tools / strategies for capturing, recording, and sharing client conversations?
Wow. Well, I guess there are all sorts of things. There's always pen and paper. It's, it's important. The people that are expected to have client conversations, and that prospecting is one of the things that, I mean, maybe it's the only thing, or it's one of the main things that they're responsible for. They need to keep track of how many calls do I need to make to talk to how many clients, or how many networking conversations do I have to get someone to that next level and start to build the relationship. And you don't necessarily need a CRM because they're really not doing that much. But if they don't know how many activities they need to do every day, week, month, they won't know if they've ever done enough activity during that day, week, or month to get them where they need to go. And I'm hoping that answers your question. I used to use index cards, Rolodex, but there's certainly other ways to keep track of things. You have any
Yeah,
ideas?
let me add on to that, and let me just invite anyone, if anybody does
Mhm.
a tool for this that they particularly like, we invite you to chat it in. Um, I'm a big fan of CRM. Sage Presence uses a CRM. I have a terrible memory. And if I didn't take notes about my conversations in the CRM, it would really be calamitous for me. So I do highly recommend some version of a CRM that allows folks to track conversations, and ideally the CRM has a phone functionality, mobile functionality, because if anybody else out there is like me and doesn't have the greatest long-term memory, what you can do is right after you have a conversation, you can call it in and talk to your tool, make a verbal note from that conversation into that record to capture it. I find that to be extremely helpful, and for multiple reasons. Maybe the non-obvious one is if I do that sooner than later, if I make a little report on a conversation verbally, then I will remember it better. And of course, it's saved in the tool. So highly recommend something like that.
Yeah, and I know the pushback is typically, part of the challenge is that when people think of their CRM, they think of what that really means in an all-encompassing manner throughout the whole organization. And you really don't have to have such an elephantine structure as some of these really large systems. And we've got this and we've got that, and oh yeah, we have a CRM. But you can have a contact management software or program, sorry, dated, but program that people can use that just keeps track of the phone calls they make. And so there's all sorts of suggestions, and we're going to offer you the opportunity if you want to have conversation around that or ask any more questions. In a few minutes, we're definitely going to let you know how you can get in touch with us and go further in depth with your particular situation if you'd like.
Yeah. Are there any other questions at the moment, Troy?
No, nothing at the moment, but as we get to the top of the hour here, we'll offer one last request for any questions. Feel free to put them in the Q&A. If you do have a question you'd like our panelists here to answer, but I think we're on track to keep moving.
All right. So let's review here. We've covered 5 steps and we drove the 5 steps with 5 questions. Let's review the 5 answers that we came up with that we are recommending that you pilot from here on out. First one here is to identify your key team members. Identify the leaders that are crucial to support this initiative. Identify the specific team leaders who you're asking to generate leads by presenting. You're asking them to network at conferences. You're asking them to keep their ears open on the job. You're asking them to talk about the firm whenever they interact with industry folks.
Mhm.
Second thing is make sure they get it by communicating the why behind this initiative and behind the specific things that you're asking them to do. The third step is to assess their skills. Now that you're clear on who it is and why you're asking them to do what you want them to do, measure how good they are at doing these things right now. Fourth thing is fill the skill gaps. Now that you know how good they are at what you want them to do, put them through some sort of skill building program so that they can be farther along that path. We personally at Sage Presence don't really believe there's thing as a finish line when it comes to presence and confidence and presentation skills, but you do want to urge them down the path to get them to always be getting better. A, by going through a training program, and B, by getting out there and practicing, because that really is the best thing that they can do to get better. And then fifth, utilize senior leadership to build momentum. It really is an organization-wide initiative. It's an organization-wide pursuit. And as you get their support, senior leadership supporting this initiative, the whole organization will gain momentum over time.
Wonderful. Well, with that, we're coming to the top of the hour. You have a few more thoughts on implementing your plan.
Absolutely. You know, I guess my concern is that you're all feeling overwhelmed, like, man, you've already told us how to do so much. Again, it's got to be what works for you. Once you have done, once you've taken the 5 steps and it depends on how deep you want to go. Maybe you take one group of team members and try to do a test and see how it works, take them through the process. But once you're ready and you have a plan, the only thing left to do is to pull the trigger, right? And that is critical. Again, leadership, your leadership. If your leadership, it's critical you present your plan to everybody in the organization and say, this is how it's going to go. But at any rate, it's, again, presenting your plan, telling them the why, making sure that they are on board and that you get what you need to do it. Again, ask for the resources, making sure that you know what you're going to need and not have it be a surprise. So upfront is best. Communicating expectations. You need to let people know, again, here's what's going to happen. This is what we expect. Same things we've been talking about. And last but not least, accountability. And again, that's one of the things that we see not as strong as it could be across the firms that we work with. So that's building in accountability. You having the permission, being positioned as being able to hold people accountable is really, really, really critical to your success.
All right. So final check-in for questions. Who has questions about how to do any of this stuff?
Going once,
Or
going
any
twice.
concerns like, yeah, right. I can't imagine this working for this particular team player.
Yeah. So Troy, you mentioned their ability to think about it and ask their questions, or as they go, let us know, reach out. We're happy to talk to you about it and help you with it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and as you take a look at this experience, thanks for the great comments. I'm glad you enjoyed the session today. If you find that this is something that you'd like a deeper dive on, please scan this QR code to enter a drawing for a complimentary BD consultation from the Sage Presence team. Again, feel free to scan that QR code and that will lead you to a page for a drawing. But feel free to reach out through our website, sagepresence.com, or call us at 612-384-0763 with any additional questions. But thank you, Pete and Lori, for a great conversation today with lots of insight, lots of nuggets to take away. Thank you so much for watching our webinar today, and we look forward to supporting you along your path. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Okay.
everybody.